The channel Machiavelli's Dark Strategy started as a quiet experiment, an exploration into the ancient principles of power, silence, and control. In the digital age, where everyone is shouting for attention, this channel chose to go the opposite route, focusing on the unseen tactics that drive influence behind the scenes. The first video in the series, titled Why Silence is Your Most Dangerous Weapon, laid the foundation of the channel's philosophy. The quietest person in the room holds the most power. In the beginning, it wasn't about trying to accumulate millions of views or gain a massive following. The creator knew that true power comes from influence, not visibility. They studied Niccolò Machiavelli's timeless writings, understanding that modern society has forgotten many of his most critical lessons. For the creator of this channel, silence was the ultimate weapon, a tool that many undervalue but holds the key to control in any situation. In the script, Machiavelli's insight was clear. The moment you open your mouth, you tell the world exactly how to hurt you. Every time someone speaks, they hand over the blueprint of their mind, revealing vulnerabilities, desires, and fears. This was the foundation of the channel's narrative. It didn't matter if the world was constantly distracted by noise, the silent observer, who watches and listens without giving away too much, is the true strategist. The first video's opening hook grabbed viewers immediately. The most dangerous person in the room is never the one shouting. It is the one who listens, watches, and says nothing. It set the tone for everything that was to come. The creator used a minimalist approach in the video itself. The content wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. The power of silence was the message, and the video reflected this with its simple yet powerful visuals and quiet pace. Through each episode, the creator would demonstrate how silence could be weaponized in negotiation, in relationships, and in everyday life. By showing how silence forces people to reveal themselves, to talk too much, and to expose their insecurities, the channel's influence grew. The quiet observer wasn't passive, they were actively gathering the ammunition to dismantle their opponent's position. Machiavelli's words were brought to life in modern day scenarios, where power is no longer about brute strength, but about controlling perception and making others act without ever lifting a finger. This is how Machiavelli's dark strategy gained its first wave of subscribers. The simplicity of its message was its allure. The creator had mastered the art of keeping things clear, concise, and most importantly, silent. Every video subtly reinforced the idea that silence was power, and the less you said, the more you gained. This laid the groundwork for the channel's success. As the channel Machiavelli's Dark Strategy continued to grow, its philosophy of silence began to resonate more deeply with its audience. Viewers who had once believed that visibility and constant communication were the keys to success now started to understand a deeper truth. Silence, when wielded correctly, is not just a defensive posture, it's an offensive strategy. The channel began to shift its focus from theory to practical application, showing how silence could be used to manipulate the dynamics of power in various situations. One of the first major insights the channel offered was how silence creates a vacuum. In Why Silence is Your Most Dangerous Weapon, the concept was laid out clearly. Humans are social creatures. We are conditioned to seek feedback. We expect it. But when silence enters the picture, it disrupts the natural rhythm of conversation. When you remove your participation, you force the other person to fill the void, and in their anxiety, they begin to reveal more than they intended. This subtle psychological principle became a cornerstone of the channel's content. The script used a powerful example to illustrate this. Imagine a salary negotiation. The typical response to a rejection would be to jump in with explanations, justifications, or counterarguments. But what if you said nothing? What if, instead of speaking, you simply allowed the silence to linger, forcing the other person to break it? In the video, the creator demonstrated how this silence often results in the other party offering concessions, sometimes even before you ask for them. This concept wasn't just theoretical. The creator used real-world scenarios, turning abstract Machiavellian principles into a roadmap for personal empowerment. Viewers learned how to apply silence in their personal relationships, professional environments, and even in their online interactions. The silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. It was an active choice to withhold information, to withhold reaction, and to withhold approval until it was earned. By taking the advice from Machiavelli to conceal your intentions, The channel's audience began to see the value in withholding their deepest thoughts, desires, and fears. People started to realize that revealing too much about themselves, whether in conversations or on social media, made them vulnerable. Machiavelli's teachings were about not giving your enemies or competitors the ammunition to manipulate you. The more silent you remained about your plans, the less they knew about your weaknesses. One of the most powerful examples from this section came when the creator discussed how silence can elevate your value. The Machiavellian approach to communication, as outlined in the video, is about creating scarcity. The more you speak, the less people value your words. But the quieter you are, the more your words carry weight. It was the old adage, less is more. By staying silent, you make people lean in when you do speak. The channel illustrated this using the metaphor of gold. Your words should be like gold, rare and valuable. This section's message was clear. Silence isn't weakness, it is control. The creator didn't just teach viewers to be quiet. They taught them how to harness the power of silence to gain influence and shift power dynamics. The channel wasn't just offering strategies for personal success, it was shaping a new philosophy of power, one where mastery of silence becomes the ultimate tool for gaining respect, authority, and control. By now, Machiavelli's dark strategy had garnered a loyal following, one that resonated deeply with the creator's message. The channel's focus on silence as a weapon of power was no longer just an abstract concept, it was becoming a practical tool for everyday life. Viewers began to apply the principles of silence in various situations, from work, meetings, and personal relationships to public speaking and social media interactions. What had started as a philosophical exploration had now evolved into a movement, with thousands of subscribers adopting silence as a core part of their strategy for personal and professional success. In this section, the creator focused on the tactical application of silence, diving deeper into the psychological dynamics at play. One of the most compelling aspects of silence, the channel explained, is its ability to disrupt the usual flow of social interaction. As humans, we are wired to respond. We have been conditioned to avoid uncomfortable pauses, to fill gaps with chatter, and to seek validation through words. But when you choose silence, you create an unpredictable environment that throws people off balance. A powerful example from the video series demonstrated how silence could be used in high stakes negotiation. When faced with a difficult request or a counteroffer, most people would instinctively try to justify their position, explain their worth, or convince the other party of their needs. But the creator taught the audience that the true power lies in resisting that instinct. By staying silent and allowing the other party to continue talking, they would reveal more than they intended. The boss in a negotiation might offer a better deal or make concessions just to break the awkward silence. The viewer would have gained power by saying nothing at all. What made this particularly compelling was the deeper psychological understanding behind it. The creator explained that silence has a way of creating tension. When someone remains quiet, the person across from them begins to feel the weight of their own words. They start to question their own position, their reasoning, and even their assumptions. This phenomenon, known as the vacuum effect, plays into a human instinct to relieve discomfort. The silent observer controls the conversation without ever speaking a word. The creator didn't just stop at negotiations. The principles were applied in everyday interactions, whether at work, with friends, or with family. Silence could defuse arguments, elevate one's status in social circles, and help people maintain control over their emotions. A key point in this section was the realization that when you speak too much, you weaken your position. People no longer see you as a leader, they see you as a mere participant in the conversation, just like everyone else. But when you keep your thoughts to yourself, you create a sense of mystery and authority. You become someone whose words are valued and whose opinions carry weight. The concept of the information diet was another key idea introduced in this section. The channel encouraged viewers to limit the amount of personal information they divulge, especially in social media or casual conversations. This was a direct application of Machiavelli's teaching to conceal your intentions. The more you share, the more you give others the chance to manipulate or use your words against you. By keeping things close to the chest, you maintain a level of control over how others perceive you and limit their ability to attack you. The channel also discussed the idea of becoming a black hole for information. In a world where everyone is desperate to share every thought, every feeling, and every update, choosing to say little and listen more becomes a powerful tactic. The quiet person in the room is often the most powerful because they are constantly gathering information without giving any away. This approach allows one to be more strategic, to understand people's motives, and to shape interactions from behind the scenes. At its core, this section was about reclaiming power by mastering the art of silence. Whether in a personal relationship or a business setting, silence puts you in the driver's seat. It gives you the time and space to think, to reflect, and to plan your next move. It allows you to observe the true intentions of others and see through their facades. It gives you the clarity and distance necessary to make calculated decisions rather than reactive ones. The more the channel explored the power of silence, the more its viewers began to understand that true strength lies not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. Silence is the strategic pause, the space in between actions where real power is forged. By learning to harness this power, viewers began to feel like they had control over their own lives in ways they had never experienced before. As Machiavelli's dark strategy continued to gain momentum, the concept of using silence as a tactical advantage became clearer and more refined. The channel's viewers, now equipped with a deeper understanding of Machiavelli's teachings, began to apply them in ways that weren't just philosophical but practical. It wasn't enough to understand that silence was powerful. They needed to learn how to wield it in everyday interactions, whether in business, personal relationships, or social settings. One of the most powerful lessons of this section was the understanding that silence is not passive, it's an active, deliberate choice. Silence isn't about avoiding conversation or retreating into isolation, it's about controlling the flow of communication. The creator demonstrated how silence can turn the tables in any interaction, from a simple conversation to a high stakes negotiation. A memorable example from the video series illustrated this principle. When faced with a confrontational situation, most people react impulsively. They become defensive, justifying their actions or defending their position. But the creator showed how remaining silent, holding your ground, and waiting for the other person to speak can completely change the dynamics. In a tense situation, a long pause can cause the other person to question themselves, forcing them to fill the silence with their own thoughts or even concessions. Um, Silence, as the channel discussed, is particularly effective when it's used to create unpredictability. The more unpredictable you are in your responses or lack of response, the more control you have. This principle was explained in the context of manipulation. Machiavelli's warning to conceal your intentions was at the heart of this tactic. If your opponent doesn't know how you'll react, they are less likely to anticipate your moves. By withholding information and reactions, you create a layer of mystery that forces others to be more cautious in their interactions with you. One of the most striking points made in this section was how silence creates respect. The channel explored the idea that in a world obsessed with sharing and over communication, being quiet gives you an edge. The more you talk, the less people listen. But when you choose silence, when you speak only when necessary, your words become rare and precious. It's the same concept as scarcity in economics. When something is rare, its value increases. By speaking less, you make people listen more when you do choose to speak. The creator then shifted focus to the importance of controlling your emotional reactions. Machiavelli's dark strategy emphasized that emotional control is essential for effective silence. The true strategist, as the channel explained, doesn't react out of emotion, they react strategically. This is where the 3-second rule was introduced. Before responding to any question or statement, take a moment to breathe, to process the situation, and to choose your response carefully. This pause, this moment of silence, allows you to take control of your emotions and reactions, and it adds weight to your words when you do choose to speak. This principle was brought to life with an example from a business meeting. Imagine a colleague challenges you, questioning your expertise or your proposal. The instinct is to defend yourself, to jump into an explanation or justification. However, as the video demonstrated, staying silent for just a few seconds forces the other person to reassess their position. The silence unsettles them, and often they'll soften their stance or even apologize, giving you the upper hand without you saying a word. The section also introduced the idea of soft gaze as a tool for emotional control. When someone tries to intimidate you or pressure you, the natural reaction is to look away or break eye contact. But the channel taught its viewers to hold steady, to look at them with a neutral, relaxed expression, and say nothing. This simple act of stillness and silence forces the other person to break. The pressure becomes too much, and often they will back down or become flustered. This section was about more than just silence, it was about mastering the art of control. By learning to stay calm, to withhold reactions, and to hold your ground in silence, the creator showed how viewers could assert their dominance in any conversation. Silence wasn't about hiding, it was about stepping into the power of unpredictability and emotional control. It wasn't about avoiding conflict, it was about knowing when to engage and when to remain silent, turning the tables in your favor with strategic restraint. By the end of this section, the audience began to realize that silence wasn't just a defensive tool, it was an offensive weapon that allowed them to shape conversations, control negotiations, and command respect. Silence wasn't the absence of sound, it was the presence of power. As Machiavelli's dark strategy progressed, the channel's audience began to understand that silence wasn't just a passive tool to avoid conflict, it was the foundation of sovereignty. By mastering silence, the creator demonstrated one could reclaim their own power and autonomy. This section focused on how to transcend the need for validation, how to stop seeking approval, and how to fully embrace the power that comes with strategic silence. Silence was no longer just a method for gaining respect, it became the means of asserting independence from the expectations and opinions of others. The creator introduced the concept of sovereign silence, the idea that by withholding your thoughts, words, and reactions, you reclaim full control over your life. In a world where everyone is desperately seeking approval, seeking validation from others through words and actions, the true sovereign remains silent, self contained, and self validated. This silence isn't about avoiding conversation or becoming a recluse. It's about not giving anyone the power to dictate how you feel or how you should behave. You don't need to explain yourself, justify your actions, or seek approval from anyone. By doing so, you remove the emotional and mental energy you've been giving away, energy that can now be redirected toward your own ambitions and goals. The creator made a powerful observation in this section. A king does not explain his decrees. A general does not justify his orders to the private. They state what is, and they move on. Silence, in this context, becomes a declaration of strength. It signals to others that you are not waiting for their approval, you are the one making decisions, and you move forward with confidence. There is no need to explain, to make excuses, or to apologize for your choices. Silence, when used correctly, conveys authority, confidence, and self assuredness. An example is shared to illustrate this concept. When someone questions your decision or challenges your authority, the instinct might be to defend your position, to clarify your reasoning, and to justify your actions. However, the true master of silence knows that over explaining weakens their stance. By offering too many words to justify a decision, you signal uncertainty. But when you remain silent, you stand firm in your decision, and others are forced to respect it because they see that you are unwavering. The creator also explored the deeper psychological effects of silence, particularly how it creates an air of mystery and intrigue. In today's world, where oversharing has become the norm, silence makes you stand out. The more you share about your life, the more predictable you become, and predictability is a vulnerability. When you stop revealing every detail about yourself, when you let others wonder what you're thinking, you become elusive. This mystery, this unreadability is power. As the channel continued to dive deeper into Machiavelli's philosophy, the creator discussed the concept of information asymmetry. By keeping your thoughts, plans, and intentions to yourself, you create an imbalance in the information shared between you and others. This asymmetry allows you to maintain control. You hold the cards, and the other person is left guessing. The more they reveal about themselves, the more you understand their motivations, fears, and weaknesses, while you remain an enigma to them. This strategy of withholding information is not deceitful, it is a deliberate choice to maintain your position of strength. In everyday life, this meant becoming a black hole for information, as the creator called it. By asking questions, deflecting attention, and keeping your responses vague, you force others to talk about themselves, to reveal their true intentions. People love to talk about themselves, and if you let them, they will do so without ever knowing what's really going on in your life. This keeps you in control, positioning you as the observer rather than the participant in the conversation. The more you remain silent, the more others are drawn into your orbit, desperate to understand you, desperate to know what you're thinking. At this point, the audience began to see silence not just as a tool for gaining respect or winning negotiations, but as the foundation of true personal sovereignty. By mastering silence, one could control their destiny. They could stop being reactive, stop being led by others, and start making decisions based on their own understanding and goals. Silence was the ultimate form of self control, and through it, one could cultivate the mental clarity and focus needed to achieve their objectives. The creator also delved into a concept that resonated with many of the viewers: the idea of stepping back from the chaos. In a world constantly bombarding us with distractions, opinions, and noise, silence provides the distance necessary for reflection. When you constantly react, you are at the mercy of external influences. But when you step back and observe, you can see the patterns, understand the dynamics at play, and make decisions that align with your true objectives. In this section, the channel emphasized that silence doesn't just protect you from manipulation, it gives you the space to think, to plan, and to execute your strategy without interference. It frees you from the endless chatter and distractions that deplete your energy, allowing you to focus on what truly matters. By mastering the art of silence, you gain the power to shape your life, to control your interactions, and to become the architect of your own destiny. As Machiavelli's dark strategy approached its final stages, the channel's creator introduced the most critical phase of the journey, mastering silence not only as a shield, but as the foundation for decisive action. Silence had protected the audience, empowered them, and sharpened their strategic thinking. But the creator was clear: silence alone was not enough to win the war. It was the foundation, the shield, but now it was time for the sword. The silence had to be broken at the right time, with the right move, and with absolute precision. This section focused on the transition from defensive silence to the strategic strike, when and how to break the silence with action so forceful, so calculated, that it ended the conflict before it even started. The creator emphasized that silence, though powerful, is not a means of avoiding conflict. It is a means of choosing when and how to engage. The real power comes from knowing exactly when to act, when to break the silence, and when to unleash a move so impactful that it forces others into submission. The channel explored how Machiavelli's philosophy of warfare, power, and control hinges on this balance of restraint and action. Silence, as explained, creates the perfect environment for observing your surroundings, understanding your adversaries, and calculating your next move. But silence is only a strategy if it leads to action. You cannot remain passive forever. At some point, the quiet observer must take control, disrupt the flow, and strike decisively. A key example used in this section was the concept of breaking the silence with action, not words. The creator explained that sometimes, when faced with a challenge or opposition, the best move is not to respond verbally, but to act. The person who can act decisively, without hesitation, and without explanation, is the one who maintains control. When you speak less and act more, your actions become a language of their own. They communicate power, confidence, and the ability to shape reality. This idea was illustrated through the story of a leader facing an insurrection. Instead of debating, justifying, or explaining why they were right, the leader acted decisively, quelling the rebellion without a word. Their silence in the lead up to the confrontation had created the space to plan, and the moment they struck, it was swift and overwhelming. The silence had built up the tension, and when it was finally broken, it shattered the opposition entirely. The channel then shifted to practical applications. Viewers were encouraged to think of strategic silence as a chess game. Silence was your opening move, your preparation. But in the end, to win the game, you must know when to make your move. The most successful individuals don't just remain silent, they know when and how to strike with precision. Silence allows you to set up the perfect conditions for your strike, but the strike itself is where true power is displayed. An example from the business world was given to illustrate this. Imagine you're in a high stakes meeting where your company is about to be acquired. The board members are discussing terms and everyone is throwing out proposals. The instinct might be to jump in, to negotiate, to defend your position. But the master of silence knows that the real power lies in waiting. By withholding your words, you allow the other party to reveal their terms, their weaknesses, and their desires. Then, when the time is right, you break your silence not with words, but with an offer, a proposal, or a move that shifts the negotiation in your favor. The creator also discussed how silence in action could be applied to personal relationships. Silence can be used to create space for reflection, but it can also be a tool for setting boundaries and defining relationships. Uh, Sometimes silence communicates more effectively than words, signaling to others what is acceptable and what is not. By holding your ground and remaining silent, you can make people respect your boundaries without ever saying a word. The channel's key message in this section was that silence is not just a defensive measure, it's a weapon. And like any weapon, it must be used at the right moment, with the right intention, and with the precision necessary to achieve the desired outcome. Uh, Silence, when followed by the right action, is unstoppable. It becomes a form of psychological warfare where the power lies in choosing when to speak and when to act and always maintaining control of the situation. The final piece of advice from the creator was simple. Once you've mastered silence, learn the art of the strike. The two are intertwined. Without silence, you can't properly assess your situation. Without the strike, silence is meaningless. Together, they form the ultimate strategy for controlling your own destiny and navigating the complexities of power in the modern world. As Machiavelli's dark strategy approached its final chapters, the channel's narrative shifted to the ultimate goal of mastering silence: transformation. Viewers who had absorbed the teachings of silence and strategic action now found themselves at the precipice of a profound personal shift. This was the point where silence was no longer just a tool for negotiation or defense, it became the cornerstone of their identity. The power of silence wasn't just about controlling others, it was about transforming oneself into an untouchable strategist who operates from a place of complete self mastery. The creator introduced the idea that becoming an untouchable strategist meant fully embracing both silence and calculated action, but also achieving inner strength. This strength wasn't about dominating others, it was about becoming unshakable in the face of external forces. It was about reaching a point where no matter what challenges came your way, you remained in control, because your foundation was built on silence, strategy, and a mastery of self. A key concept discussed in this section was the idea of emotional sovereignty. The true Machiavellian strategist, as the channel explained, doesn't seek to be loved or liked, they seek to be effective, and they achieve that by mastering their emotions. One of the most powerful lessons of this section was that emotional control is the ultimate form of power. To be untouchable means that nothing, no insult, no setback, no challenge can shake your composure. This is where silence plays a pivotal role. The more you practice silence, the more you train yourself to detach from the emotional noise that surrounds you. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop giving in to the need for approval, validation, or sympathy. You no longer feel the urge to explain yourself, justify your actions, or defend your decisions. The creator discussed how this emotional sovereignty manifests in daily life. For example, imagine a moment when someone challenges you or questions your choices. The typical response would be to explain yourself, to justify your actions, or to argue your point. But the strategist, the master of silence, doesn't respond in the way others expect. They remain calm, unflinching, and composed. By doing so, they convey strength. The act of not reacting in the face of provocation sends a powerful message to others: you cannot rattle me. This level of control is not about suppressing emotions, it's about choosing when to express them and when to let them remain silent. The power in this lies in knowing that you are in full command of your emotional state and that no one can force you to react in a way that serves their agenda. Another key idea in this section was the importance of creating a strategic distance from others. The creator explained that in order to achieve true independence and power, one must establish boundaries, mental, emotional, and social. Silence is the tool that allows you to establish these boundaries. When you remain silent, you control the flow of information, and this gives you the power to protect your inner world from the influence of others. You become untouchable because you have withdrawn yourself from the noise, from the chaos, and from the incessant demands of those around you. The idea of creating a protective fog around your life was introduced. This fog is built on silence. When you stop revealing everything about yourself, your plans, your emotions, your struggles, you create an aura of mystery. People no longer know what you're thinking or what you're doing. They can't predict your actions or anticipate your next move. This mystery makes you appear more powerful because you are unpredictable. You become the one everyone else is trying to figure out, while you sit back and observe, always in control. The channel then explored the deeper psychological effect of this transformation. When you practice silence and emotional sovereignty, you no longer seek approval or validation from others. This changes your entire relationship with the world. You become a player in the game, not a pawn being pushed around. You make decisions based on what you want, not based on what others expect from you. You are no longer a victim of social conditioning. You are free. And this freedom, the freedom to be yourself without needing anyone's permission or approval, is the essence of becoming untouchable. In the final moments of this section, the creator shared a powerful quote from Machiavelli: "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves." The creator explained that becoming untouchable is about being adaptable. It's about knowing when to remain silent, when to strike, and when to retreat. The strategist operates in the shadows, observing and calculating, never revealing their hand until the moment is right. To be untouchable, you must master silence in its most complete form. You must become someone who can navigate the world without being pulled by its distractions, who can walk through the noise without being consumed by it. You must learn to be the observer, the architect, the player, not the pawn. This is the final step in the journey: becoming the untouchable strategist, someone who controls their own fate and operates from a place of absolute power and self mastery.